So you're finally ready to invest in Bitcoin, but how exactly are you going to do it? Me personally, it is Bitcoin ETFs, and that's what we're going to be checking out in today's video. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, it can be a very risky investment. Considering the real world use and the adoption, digital tokens are still pretty limited and the price can be super volatile. When we look at the last couple of years of Bitcoin, a lot of ups and downs, but Bitcoin continues to be more and really gaining widespread audience and acceptance among not only investors, but financial institutions. And thinking of the administration that we have right now, it seems like after we started passing and really launching all of these spot Bitcoin level ETFs or exchange traded funds last year, it's been kind of on a run. Now, ETFs has made it super easy for investors to invest in Bitcoin like myself that do not want to hold the actual currency. I don't want to worry about Coinbase having it on an exchange. I don't want it in a cold storage wallet going through that whole prospect. When you start looking at ETFs, there are two that really stand above the rest when it comes to really investing in Bitcoin. Now, the first one is the iShares Bitcoin Trust. This is the IBIT. This is the one that I personally hold. If you looked at my 4 ETF portfolios, this is the one that I do carry. This was one of the very first Bitcoin ETFs that were launched last year, quickly became the most popular among investors because when you think of the actual fees, which we'll get into, but looking at the ETF has about $56 billion in assets. So people have already invested $56 billion into this one ETF. Now, the size of the iShare Bitcoin ETF is notable because there's plenty of people buying and selling ETFs. This allows for easy liquidity and potentially lower transaction costs, and that's exactly what we're seeing. The ETF is backed by BlackRock, which we know is a mega predominant investment company, and Coinbase. So when you think about this ETF, BlackRock holds the ETF, Coinbase holds the cryptocurrency. Now, Coinbase, if you're unfamiliar, top cryptocurrency exchange for Bitcoin custody, is also very noteworthy because BlackRock does not own the coins themselves. That is important to note that Coinbase is the custodian for the Bitcoin that you do hold in the ETF. So this Bitcoin has been super popular among billionaires as well. With millennials management, Israel Engler, I think I'm saying that right, added 12.6 million shares of the ETF, bringing it up to a total of 23.5 million shares. And the big thing, when you think about the expensive and how expensive some of these Bitcoin ETFs came out of, ETF charges an expense ratio of a 0.25, which means you'll pay $2.50 annually on every $1,000 that you have invested. It is not only one of the very lowest fees that we have for a Bitcoin ETF, but it's super competitive in the marketplace. Then we have to look at the second ETF, which is a relatively new ETF from Grayscale. This is the Grayscale Bitcoin Mini Trust ETF. So they have a regular Grayscale Trust ETF for Bitcoin, and then they have this mini. This is a very popular option for investors because if you're wondering where the mini comes from, why it gave it its mini name, this was spun off, and this is an ETF that was spun off from Grayscale's larger Bitcoin ETF, with 10% of its holdings going to the smaller ETF. So they created a miniature ETF or 10% of the original holdings, which makes the mini ETF. Now, the notable thing with this is when you look at this, it is the lowest Bitcoin fee that is being charged. They are charging a 0.15 or $1.50 for every 1,000 invested, which is far cheaper than the company's original Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which had a management fee of 1.5%. Think of that, guys. You are talking 10x when it comes to management fees based on the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. That is why they made this little mini one. Cheaper fees, super important, because if Bitcoin is going up and down, you're still going to be charged the fees. You have to know that when it comes to investing. There's also going to be a fee for pretty much everything. We see some management fees. We see a couple different fees that do come out of these. And it's super important because the lower the fees, the more money and the more returns you're going to have. For example, if you put $2,000 in the Grayscale Bitcoin Mini ETF versus Bitcoin's value going up 10%, you'd have about $30 or you'd save about $30 in annual fees compared to the original one. So thinking about a small $2,000 investment, $30 annually just based on fees alone. So when it comes to buying Bitcoin ETFs, you have to keep some things in mind. Bitcoin value has soared about 100% over the last 12 months. That is something to remember. thinking of investments, thinking of really stocks in general, would you start investing when they're up 100%, sparking a ton of interest? And of course, the market has been going crazy, but Bitcoin can be super volatile. A lot of people love to buy the dip and waiting for it to go down. The digital currency has actually dropped about 13% from in about the last month. It's dropped about 13%. So definitely keep in mind with that. If you're investing, definitely looking at Bitcoin ETFs. Again, if you don't want to hold the coins itself, like I don't, I am keeping them in my ETF, putting them in my investment portfolio versus buying and actually holding the coin. Now, again, when it comes to cryptocurrency, I have to stress it. You have to do your own research. You have to know exactly what you're investing in. It's super, super important when it comes to investing in cryptocurrency. You have to know exactly what the blockchain technology is about. And that is kind of what they're getting away from. When you want to know and when you have questions, it is still super speculative when it comes to investing. If you're able to stomach those really hard and large downswings or upswings, you have to keep a level head. If you're buying and holding, that is the strategy you have to keep with, even if the price is going up or going down, because ultimately, if you're a true believer in the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ETFs and how they're rolling this out, it seems like a lot of people are just going to buy it and hold it for the intrinsic value, very similar to what we see with holding gold and a couple other ones. And of course, we know Ethereum is behind it. XRP could be behind it. There could be a lot more ETFs in the future that are getting this type of attention overall with the cryptocurrency. I want to take one more minute and just look at both of these kind of side by side. I went to ETF.com and broke this out a little bit. So looking at both of these, you can see the price a little bit different. So the IBIT, which again is the one that I hold, $55. We have the BTC, which is the mini trust right over here, 43. But look at the value, the actual holding, 57 billion right here, 2.3 billion on an average daily trade volume, which means this doesn't have much money at all. I mean, 4 billion in relationship, that is a little bit different. And you'll also notice that the underlying index is a little bit different as well. And the big thing to note is right here, it sits in the fees, the 0.15 versus the 0.25. And honestly, for me to have the availability, for me to have a little bit of a wider scope in a bigger market, I right now am still going to stick with that IBIT ETF because I don't want to worry about the BTC. I don't want to worry about being able to trade it or not trade it, depending on exactly what it is. But guys, that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments if you're investing in Bitcoin or if you're investing in some of these Bitcoin ETFs. I know a lot of places have said having 1% or 2%. I've seen some people that are up to 10, 15% in Bitcoin itself. So let me know exactly the percentages that you're standing on when it comes to Bitcoin, and I'll catch you in the next video.